Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on social entrepreneurship and creating NGOs. This webinar is part of the Pathways to Active Democracy project, which was co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. Today, we're here to talk about how individuals like you, young, passionate, socially conscious, can create meaningful change in the world. This session will explore what it means to be a social entrepreneur, how NGOs work as vehicles for change, and how you can start your own initiative. Social entrepreneurship isn't just about business, it's about purpose. It's about spotting a problem in your community or the world and taking action using tools like innovation, collaboration, and sustainable thinking. Today, we will cover key terms, real-life examples, and some practical steps to help you take your first or next steps into the world of social change. Let's start with the basics. What is social entrepreneurship? Social entrepreneurship is the process of developing and implementing innovative solutions to social, cultural, or environmental problems. Social entrepreneurs operate with the mindset of a business person, but with a mission-driven heart. The main goal is not just to make a profit, but to make a positive impact, a positive change. That being said, many social enterprises do aim for financial sustainability so they can scale up and reach more people and have even more impact. Social entrepreneurs aim for a double bottom line or even a triple bottom line goals. So, impact and sustainability. The impact can be also social or environmental. If you can think of social entrepreneurs that you know already, you might already have examples of areas that they work on and that issues that they address. Those can be access to education, as we said, the environment, climate change, and sustainability, gender equality, digital inclusion and education, and even poverty and unemployment. According to the Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurs are drivers of inclusive growth who pursue new ideas that create systemic social change. Another source, the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, tells us that social enterprises contribute to inclusive growth and social cohesion by tackling systemic issues through innovative, self-sustaining business models. So what are the characteristics of social entrepreneurs? What do we see in most of them? First of all, they start by identifying a specific social or environmental problem. Then, they create a business model that addresses this problem, that supports its solution. Then, they measure success not just in profit, but in social impact. So indeed, the financial sustainability is important because that keeps the company existing and can have more impact, but it is not as important for success as the social impact that the social entrepreneur can create. Another beautiful quote that really exemplifies what it is to be a social entrepreneur comes from Bill Drayton, who's the founder of Ashoka, an organization that funds other social enterprises. What he said: social entrepreneurs are not content just to give a fish or teach someone how to fish. They will not rest until they have revolutionized the fishing industry. So now, as we take our first step into understanding social entrepreneurship, I want you to think about a problem in your community, something that is really bothering you, something you don't like seeing or experiencing. It would be really helpful if you would make a list of how many you can think of. And the question I want you to think after you made this list of all the problems, the issues, the things that are bothering you is, could it be addressed with an innovative service or a product? To better understand how social enterprises work in real life, it's useful to look at some real-world examples. So, first of all, we have the example of the fair trade organizations. For example, Fair Trade International is an organization that ensures farmers and producers in the global south receive fair wages and decent working conditions. What is their business? Basically, they get involved with products like coffee, chocolate, and cotton, and they make sure that they are sold at market rates. What is their social impact? What is their goal? Is to reduce poverty and exploitation of the people working in the sectors. Then we have an example from Europe, from Portugal, the organization Speak. This is where people can gather and learn languages together and also share their culture. So it combines this cultural integration of people and language learning. What they do is they bring together migrants, refugees, and locals, and they offer the opportunity for them to share their languages and cultures with each other. It does operate as a social business, and at the same time it receives grants and support from organizations and entities like the EU. Then we have another global initiative. This is more of a community project. It's called Precious Plastic. So this is an open source community project that teaches people how to recycle plastic into other usable goods and encourages more local, smaller enterprises and their sustainability. Another example, which I think is really important in the digital landscape that we are living in, and also if we keep in mind how costly the materials and the work of the people that are making all our digital equipment, so like phones and other like laptops, is Fairphone. Fairphone is a company from the Netherlands, and they are creating smartphones that are that go basically against the fashion of just buying a phone for 1 year and then something doesn't work with it and you just replace it and get another new one. So the smartphone that Fairphone are creating is a phone that is designed to be repairable, also easy to repair. So in some cases you can even do it yourself. And they also pay a lot of care into using conflict-free materials. Then another example that you may also have used, I have used that. We do not have it here in Greece anymore, but I have tried it in the Netherlands, and I think we have another organization here in Greece as well. And I'm talking about the application, the Too Good To Go. So it's an application that is fighting food waste, and it's doing that by connecting users, people, with stores and shops that have some unsold food that they would soon throw away. And they make these packets that they sell in lower price, so it helps the store by that doesn't have to throw away their goods. They even make maybe a little bit of profit or even break even from things that would go to waste. They are getting known, so it acts also as an advertisement for them, because people can try them out and see if they like them to visit them again. And of course it helps also people, because they can get food that is still fine. It is not already gone bad. It's fine, and they can get it in a lower price, and also help with the issue of the food waste. Then we have another example. This is more of a platform, not really an app, and in this case it comes from Germany, and it's the initiative called Refugees Welcome. So they have a platform that is matching refugees with people offering rooms in their homes, and does also other actions that promote integration. Then one other example that I've seen a lot of in recent years, because I think young people especially are really concerned about environment. So there are a lot of youth-led, youth-started startups that are focusing more on the being more eco-conscious. So a lot of young entrepreneurs are creating products that are biodegradable or that are low waste. They are launching urban farming projects. So I know that we have, let's say, in Athens, there is a girl that is producing honey that is made like in Athens, in an urban environment. So I think it's so yeah. For example, there is now here you need to cut it because my phone rang. Yes. So one very cool idea that I've seen in action is recently I found out that there's this girl, this young woman who is producing honey, and it happens in Athens. And if you've ever been in Athens, it's like very urban. It has a very minimal amount of green. So I find this very interesting how she has managed to do that. And of course, education is another big part of social entrepreneurship. So when we talk especially about eco startups, new initiatives that are focused on this environmental area, we have a lot of parallel educating people on climate change. So, now that we're talking about examples, and I put out many, and probably if I kept talking about this, I would think even more. There's a question for you. Have you ever seen or been involved even in a social enterprise in your country? Maybe you have some inspiring examples and you can put them down below for everyone to get to know more about them. When we talk about social entrepreneurship, there's not just one model that describes it. So let's break down those different models of social action. Maybe you have already heard of non-profit organizations. These are organizations that cannot and do not distribute profit to members or stakeholders. So basically, if they have any earnings extra from the cost, those are reinvested back into the organization and its mission and its growth. They can generate income through donations, grants, sales of goods and services. Let's imagine an example. Maybe there's an NGO that makes handmade crafts and they sell those, and those profits, the income from these crafts is going to fund education for girls. Or maybe we have another NGO, and we actually do have an example just like that in Greece as well, where they provide free mental health support to the people, and they fund this by having donations and other types of funding. So that was all about non-profit organizations. So let's see a bit more about for-profit social enterprises and what are those differences between this and an NGO. So a for-profit social enterprise aims to be financially sustainable. It can distribute profit, but because the goal, as we said before, is not just the profit, it's also the social impact, they often reinvest a portion to further their mission, grow, and have more social impact. So let's put it more into specifics and talk about maybe some examples. So imagine a company that creates eco-friendly fashion, reinvests maybe like 30 or 50% of their profits into an ocean cleanup project. So this is a for-profit social enterprise. So it still has a goal of making money and creating profit and also distributing those profits into the stakeholders. But at the same time, it has this social inclination and mission to support a cause. Another example would be a company that sells toothbrushes that are made from more eco-friendly materials, and then they make some income from that, and some of the profits are being reinvested into planting trees. So we have these two models, the NGO that is completely non-for-profit and the for-profit social enterprise, and at the same time we have some organizations that are more hybrid. So some organizations may also have a non-profit but also a business and for-profit wing. For example, maybe you can imagine a non-governmental, an NGO, a non-for-profit organization that also sell something, maybe a course or a book. Um, So we talked about these non-for-profit organizations, NGOs, and the for-profit social enterprises. But there's a third option, I would say, and those are companies that follow a more hybrid model. So maybe they set up both a non-profit and a business wing. Imagine an example, a non-governmental organization that works on education, that also sell maybe courses or workshops or books. So when we talk about these options, the next question is, what is the right model for your idea, for the thing that you would like to create? So choosing the right model, the most fitting model, really depends. It depends on the legal environment in your country, what kind of organizations is easier to sustain, um, because of all because of the legal framework. Maybe you need a lot of people, a big team to create an NGO, or maybe you don't. Then it also depends on your long-term vision. How do you envision the growth of the company? Whether you want to scale it up really big, if you want to partner with governments, if you want to receive funding that is for non-profits, then that will help you choose, or if you want more to attract impact investors, so people who invest in part of your company. So when choosing the right model for your idea and for your plan, you need to think about your mission, what you want to create. Think about the audience who you are trying to reach and their characteristics as well. How you plan to fund your idea. And of course, as I said before, the legal frameworks that you need to research depending on your country. There are some European regulations. If you want to look more into that, I would invite you to search for the European Social Enterprise Monitor. So now if you're now here with me, no, blah 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 blah. So now that you have the issue you want to work with, maybe you have an idea of how to solve it, then comes the next question. Do you think would your idea work better as a non-profit or a social enterprise with income? And why is that? And what are the differences in its form if you choose one or the other? So maybe you decided to form an NGO. Let's see what it seems complex as let's say a plan, but it's manageable when we break it down to smaller steps. So what would be the process? Number one, it's really important to define your mission and your vision, to decide on what change do you want to make and be quite specific there. Then you need to also think who are your beneficiaries, who is your target group, who you want to help by your initiative. Then the second step is to form a founding team. So you need to find people you can work together, people who believe in the cause, people who you have, let's say, common vision, and you can communicate openly and freely. Here it's really helpful if you try to have diversity in everyone's skills. Maybe someone is better in finance, maybe another person wants to work on the communication, maybe you have someone with a legal background. So that is really supportive when you try to make a team to work on an initiative, to make an organization or a group, to have these different abilities and skills that are really needed. Then, usually the next step is to write down and draft your statutes and other internal regulation. So there, of course, you're gonna put your mission and your vision, but you will need to be a bit more specific and include other your objectives, so more concrete what your goals are. Again, there you will have also described the rights of your members. If someone is joining your group or your organization, what they can do and what they can't. Maybe you have a structure of governance that you also need to clarify in the statutes. You can find those examples and templates online, or maybe through a startup helping organization. Then when you have your team and your status and everything is clear, you'll need to register. That it depends on your country, the way that you need to follow. For example, here in Greece, you are registered in a body that's called YEMI, or in Portugal, you will need to register with RNPC. At the same time, you probably will need to register with the tax authority and with social security bodies, so you will get a tax number, a VAT number as well if it's needed there, and open a bank account so you can start receiving funds. After you've done all the steps and basically you have your organization, the next step is to start actions, and start, of course, with small things. Start getting fundraising through different means. Maybe you apply for some small local grants, or you could even host events or use a crowdfunding platform. At the same time, since we are in the let's say in the area of Erasmus Plus, I also want to talk about another option you have, especially as young people. Maybe you want to start something, but this whole process of creating an NGO is a bit daunting. If you are interested, and the next webinar we're gonna talk a lot about different Erasmus Plus opportunities. So if you're interested to participate in Erasmus Plus or some local projects, or even organize your own, you do not need to have a non-governmental non-profit organization. You can do that by creating an informal group. So how does that work? You get a few young people together, you make a team, and you can apply for funding or join a project as a partner. You cannot really open bank accounts and sign contracts, and you don't really need to do that in this way. And of course, you can also find another NGO or another enterprise that can be, let's say, a partner or a fiscal sponsor to help you manage any funds you get. So, my advice is, if you want to start in the social entrepreneurship world, to start small, start maybe informally, That way you can build the experience, you can see what works, you can see if your idea is also viable and it has the impact that you wish, and then see and decide to register when you're ready. You can also partner with other experienced NGOs to learn by working with them, to build trust between you, maybe create a project together, so you have also this experience from another organization's point of view. So we have our issue, and we have our possible solution, and then we decided what kind of entity we're going to create. So how can we do what we want to do? How can we achieve our social impact? We really need funding. Funding and lack of access to funding is a major barrier. But there are a lot of options, especially for motivated young people like you. As I mentioned already, and as we're going to talk about in the next webinar, there is Erasmus+. There's funding you can apply for and access. I want especially to highlight a few projects of Erasmus+, and that is the Key Action 154, which is the youth participation activities. This part of the project is funding mostly local activities with an European impact. Then we have the cooperation partnerships. That is quite a large-scale project. It is not. It's more long-term as well, but it helps by giving access to funding that is a bit more sustainable for an organization, and that it helps them to create some impact, a bigger impact further on. And then the other program that I want to talk about is the European Solidarity Corps. That can help you in, I would say, multiple ways. One is that you can volunteer with another organization that maybe is working in the sector that you want to get active, or that you know has a lot of experience and you can learn lots from them, or even organize your own project, your own volunteer project in your country, and get some volunteers to come join you in building your impact. We will have down below the link to the Erasmus Plus website where you can go, you can read the guide. There are, of course, more options than I just described here. Apart from this EU funding, you can also, of course, find national and local grants. This is really up to your ability to search for them. You can find them out from youth institutes, maybe some, if your municipality has a youth department, or you have a councillor, local organization that is involved with that. For example, we have here in Greece an institution and a foundation that is funding other small local social initiatives. Then another option when we need funding is, as I mentioned before, crowdfunding. So trying to get your idea out and ask for interested people to support you with their monetary addition. So there are a lot of platforms that you can use, like GoFundMe or Kickstarter. What is the most important thing when creating a crowdfunding campaign? I would say is the storytelling. You need to have, as we said already before, a clear mission, a vision, and make it really clear for the people that are going to check your page, and make them feel something, make them connect to your why. And then another option is to for corporate sponsorships and corporate social responsibility initiatives. A lot of for-profit companies have these initiatives called corporate social responsibility, where they allocate a budget to help other NGOs or small initiatives in order for them to also show that they have a social impact without changing their business plan, basically. So, for example, we could be that a bank is sponsoring and supporting an NGO that does workshops, education on financial literacy. And then, last but not least, you can also look into we're going to link it below, the EU funding and tenders portal. That is another way to get EU funds. It is quite more advanced, but it's great to really scale up when you have already some growth to make it even more sustainable and innovative as well. So we talked about a lot of different ways where you can get support and funding to make your idea reality. What I want to tell you is to don't be afraid to start small. Usually the first months an NGO has really little income, and even a small amount, even let's say 500 euros, if they are spent well, can make a big difference. So now that we went through all these funding opportunities, I invite you to check the websites and the links we have below, and find one program that sparks something in you, interests you, and write down why. Then we have the idea, we have the issue, we have the idea that solves, we make our entity, we go for funding. How do we do it in reality? How do we organize all these things? Well, now I wanted to share about certain tools and platforms that can help you, help organize you, help you be and amplify your work, make it easier for you, and also make it stronger. So number one, I would say digital tool that I think that everyone in the NGO world uses already is Canva. In Canva you can make all the visual materials that your organization, your group will need. You can make posters, social media visuals like reels, you can edit reels, you can edit photos, you can make flyers, business cards, anything you can think of. Then for planning your project, for more of a project management tool, a lot of organizations use Trello or Asana. These are two tools that are really useful, and you can try them out, see what fits more your way of working. Then we have one of my personal favorites, which is Notion. Notion is how to describe it? It's basically different databases that you yourself create depending on your needs, and you can put inside anything from documents, calendars, you can make wikis, and you can keep there a lot of useful information, and I think it's easy for knowledge sharing, so when you get a new person in the team, that they can easily get up to speed on how things work. Then something that is super useful is Google Workspace. That is actually free for NGOs with the integration of Gmail, email, the Drive, where you can upload a lot of documents and have them easily shared, and Docs. And then you want a tool that is going to be for your internal team communication. So how you daily discuss what is to be done and what needs to be done and anything more pressing. There is a lot of options there as well. It could be WhatsApp, which is, let's say, what I use in my NGO work, but there's also other organizations that work with Slack or Telegram. Then we already talked about the opportunities, the funding opportunities, but I want to highlight one specific website that can help you a lot, especially if your goal is to get some Erasmus Plus funding, and that is Salto Youth. Through Salto Youth you can find out a lot of calls for trainings where you can go and develop your skills and also network with other organizations. You can find organizations to be partners in your project, or to reach out to them so you can be their partner. You can also find training tools and methods, so materials that were created from other projects that can help you in your own. And generally it's a really useful website and very active as well. Then the European Youth Portal and the Funding and Tenders Portal, there you can find different calls for funding opportunities, and you can discover also some tools to help you get that funding. Okay, now let's wrap up. Social entrepreneurship and NGOs are really powerful things that can make change happen. Because really the world needs more bold and more creative people who are willing to tackle big problems with small steps. So if you ever had an idea, or if you got it during this webinar, whether it's about inclusion, education, the environment, the climate, or mental health and well-being, I want you to know that you can act on it. If you define your mission, start small, find partners, make teams, and learn from each other, and use the tools and the funding that is available to you, you can create amazing impact. Thanks a lot for being a part of this session. We cannot wait to see the ideas you create.